Okay, Celiac Awareness Month, day 4, take 4. So I apologize. I am back in my home office today. But yeah, sorry for the way that I am looking right now. I was outside doing one of my favorite activities for getting active and burning some calories. I call it dirt therapy, working in the garden. So I did manage to squeeze in a shower before going live, but I would rather have spent some of the time prepping mentally than prepping physically. So hey, I'm freshly showered. Even though Facebook doesn't have smell-o-vision, the look on my face wouldn't have been great. I was chopping some trees, some roots, clearing out the area to the farm. Once again, it is a huge project that my boyfriend and I have been working on, and then burning it. So I kind of smelled like a little tween boy who'd been dancing around a campfire. It was not a good smell. Anyway, Celiac Awareness Month, day 4, and today's topic is, yesterday we talked about the gluten-free trend. Before that, we've talked about non-celiac gluten sensitivity, and we've talked about celiac. So the question is, who should consider going gluten-free? Much to the shock of some people, my response is not going to be everybody. I know that some people think, oh gosh, everybody who's gone gluten-free, they want everybody to go gluten-free. And I'm going to tell you that that is not always the case. So there are some people, however, that would benefit from going gluten-free and that have benefited from going gluten-free. Clearly, somebody who has celiac, somebody who has non-celiac gluten sensitivity. But then there are some other conditions that are going on with some people that it is worth looking into going gluten-free. Now, one of the things that I was going to show you guys actually is I was going to show you an app that I recommend for a lot of my clients and for people that come to me asking about, how they feel and they think that this is upsetting them or upsetting their system, or they notice that they're having these weird symptoms of stuff. So I'm actually going to see if I can do this while I'm on a go live. I know this is completely not the cool way to do it, but sometimes you just have to be spontaneous, especially when you have to go from the laptop to the phone after 3 different attempts. So I am going to try to pull up, where's the App Store? iTunes, I think. Nope, it's not in iTunes. Here we go, App Store. How about if I go to actual App Store? All right, guys. The name of the app is called My Symptoms. I am not sure if it's going to come up on my Mac. So we're going to see, because if it did, this would have been so much easier for me to show you. Nope, it's not coming up. Awesome. Okay. I cannot show it to you, and the reason I can't is because I'm on my phone. So, all right. But anyway, My Symptoms is an app. I think it costs like $2.99. And let me just say, I get no royalties from this, but I swear now I wish that I did, or that I could come up with something like this. Maybe down the road I will. But anyway, one of the things is that in talking about, there are certain autoimmune and inflammatory conditions that people can experience where it's a good idea for them to go gluten-free, or where they have seen benefit from going gluten-free and their doctors might recommend it. Clearly, I am not a physician. I'm not going to pretend to give medical advice. So always talk to your doctor first. Also, make sure that the doctor that you're talking to actually understands this, because if you go and talk to a doctor and they're not informed about it, they're just going to say, don't do it, it's a trend. And I'm not saying not to do it or to do it, but please go to somebody that understands celiac and gluten, because that's going to be the most beneficial to you. Because you want somebody, if they're going to give advice on something, you want somebody that actually understands it. So anyway, people that have seen benefit from going gluten-free would be people who have conditions such as thyroid conditions, people who have things like rheumatoid arthritis or other autoimmune disorders going on, children and people with autism have seen some benefit in going gluten-free. But then there are also some other symptoms that people can experience. So here's where we're going to get lovely. Sorry, guys. If you are having a lot of reflux, going gluten-free might help you. If you have either fast or slow digestion, so diarrhea or constipation, going gluten-free might help you. A couple of things, though, that you really need to know, because there are some good ways to do it and some not so great ways to do it. And there's also the, what you should know is that you don't want to go gluten-free before doing certain things. So a couple of things to know. First of all, like I said, talk to your healthcare professional. Talk to somebody, ask your healthcare professional how well versed they are in this. And if they're not, ask them to, ask them who is, because you want to talk to somebody that knows what they're talking about. Another thing that you can do before making any changes in your diet is that free app called My Symptoms that I was trying to pull up for you guys. Oh, sorry, it's not free. It's $2.99. Like I said, I get no royalties from it, but it is fantastic. In My Symptoms, you can track all of the food that you're eating. You can track your symptoms. You can track your water intake. You can track your activity, and you can track, also you can rate your symptoms on a scale of 1 to 10 as to what's going on. My Symptoms will then look for those commonalities in what tends to be triggering your symptoms. So if you've got hay fever, allergies, skin rashes, reflux, things like that, wouldn't it be good to actually have data instead of saying, I think I'd had this, I think I'd had that. Then you can also see in relation to when you ingested certain foods, is there a certain time period when it's happening? Because it's not always the gluten. It's worth looking into to see what might be triggering it, okay? So track your My Symptoms before going to your healthcare professional to see if they notice anything in there as well. It could be a medicine that you're taking. It could be something completely unrelated that you don't realize. So that's, like I said, is always worth kind of tracking to know really and truly what's going on. So that's something else to consider. Tracking your symptoms, keeping up with it, and then how to go gluten-free. Okay, so if you get to the point where you decide to go gluten-free and you've, again, worked with a healthcare professional, could be traditional, could be non-traditional, don't make the same mistake that I did. I will talk a lot more in depth about this on some other Go Lives, but I do at least want to give you a couple of little tips here. When I first went gluten-free, I found some great resources. I'll talk to you guys about those later. And I lived in a small town. I lived in Greenville, North Carolina at the time. About a year into diagnosis, my then pharma company that I was working with relocated me to Greensboro, North Carolina. And I was so excited because we had Earth Fare here, we had Whole Foods, and I could suddenly get all those substitutes because my daughter, who also had to go gluten-free, was in daycare, and I wanted to be able to give her the options of having the gluten-free version of what everybody else had. I didn't realize the glycemic index in those pre-made gluten-free foods, the boxed foods, was so much higher. So I don't believe in trying to completely make your kids deprived or anything like that. But what I will say is that I gained 30 pounds that first year. And it's because I had no clue that the rice flour, the potato starch, things like that, those ingredients that make the gluten-free foods actually palatable, they have a way higher carb and sugar count. So especially when I was substituting those foods at dinner time, I was eating a ton of sugar, like within a couple hours of going to bed, and that sugar was converting to fat. So there are good ways and not so great ways to go gluten-free. And those are things that you want to be aware of. The more natural you can go with real foods, meat, vegetables, protein, things like that. We'll go into that, like I said, a little bit later. But you should know there are some people that could benefit from going gluten-free. It is important to work with a healthcare professional if you're thinking about making changes in your diet and lifestyle. You should also be able to have some data, track some of that, and see if there are certain foods, because it's not always the gluten. And even though I feel a ton better with going gluten-free, it's because I actually have celiac. If you read Dr. William Davis's book, Wheat Belly, there are a ton of people who would do better with some autoimmune conditions if they ditched the wheat. But that doesn't mean that everybody should. So always make sure when you're making any kind of changes in your health care, in your health decisions, in the way that you're doing things, always make sure that you're working with a professional, and make sure that you're working with one that is actually trained in those areas. So find one that knows how to work with that if your current healthcare professional doesn't know how to. And make sure you actually have real data. The touchy-feely way of doing things is, it might seem like the easy way, but you really and truly want to have some data when you make those decisions. And you also want to be able to do it in a way that is correct. Finally, the reason that you don't go gluten-free before talking to a healthcare professional is if your healthcare professional wants to test you for celiac and you have gone gluten-free, you will have to go back on gluten for a minimum of 6 to 8 weeks on what's called the gluten challenge. So do not go gluten-free before working with a healthcare professional, because you're going to have to go back on it. And if you feel those symptoms being so much better, then you're not, or you may not necessarily want to go back on gluten. And that could be hard because you actually have to be ingesting gluten for showing those inflammation markers for celiac. And you have to be on it every day for a minimum of 6 to 8 weeks in order to get an accurate result. They also might want to do an endoscopy. They might want you still on gluten to do that endoscopy. If you have a dermatitis herpetiformis, if you got that rash, they're going to want to see you when you have that so that they can actually biopsy that as well. So don't make changes without first working with your healthcare professional. Make sure you do it the educated way. Make sure you've got some data. And if you have one of those conditions going on, if you've got thyroid issues, especially Hashimoto's, ooh, there's some good data around Hashimoto's and going gluten-free. If you have something like rheumatoid arthritis, if you've got reflux, if you've got diarrhea, if you've got constipation, things like that. I know IBS and all those things right now are really big, and there's definitely some research out there showing the commonality between IBS and celiac. But make sure that you make an informed decision and make sure that you make it with a healthcare professional. I hope that helps. If you find this helpful, please share this with others. With Celiac Awareness Month, I think this is a fantastic opportunity to be able to educate and advocate. Educate ourselves, educate others, advocate so that people can have a better understanding of what it is that we're trying to speak up about. And thank you guys. If you find this helpful, please share this with others. And my apologies for having to watch this or having to show this a couple of times or record this a couple of times. I got to figure out what's going on with my laptop. Hey, honey. All right, somebody else is tuning in. So have a wonderful day. Thank you, guys. Take care.